I think I made enough copies this time. Here. No. 2, 3, 4. These are for Shimshon, Dovi, Adrian, and Chezi. Everyone else is going to get from this pile. Take one and pass it down. Chezi, that's for you. They're coming around. Come on, pass him.
Pass him. Take and pass.
What is everybody looking for?
Because I see the way he quotes the Gemara on the top of the page. He doesn't finish it. Over there? Lots of Gemara.
Where's Shachar when you need it?
Alright, let's go. Let's cover up that. Why would you do that?
Show the camera.
Actually, when I was in Chanaf, someone said, he's like, oh, I've never used Netzel Gemara while learning. I'm like, hey, you probably somebody should have. Can you guess who that was, Rabbi? Who said that? Never used the Leonard Scroll? From Chanaf, my year.
Matt. Not really. He's probably still never used it.
Probably.
Okay. Gentlemen, the Gemara that we're going to take a look at. The Gemara we're going to take a look at. This is a shir that Dovi very much enjoyed last year. It's a little bit unusual in the way it comes in the conclusion of the shir. This is a very important story in the Gemara. Okay, so story time. Everyone ready for a story?
Yeah.
Oliver, do you like stories?
Yes.
Benson, you like stories?
I love stories.
Everyone likes stories. You know why you like stories?
They're interesting.
Because you're a human being.
Yeah.
All human beings like stories.
So if we don't like stories, they don't
Telling you, man.
They don't reflect effort that
It's not just that. Every human being. You get up to speak, you just start telling stories, everyone's listening. You can have the most boring speech going on, and suddenly the person says, let me tell you a story, and suddenly everyone wakes up.
Is that why all speeches have a story?
Yeah. All good speeches have a story.
What was the title this year?
What?
Actually, the good speech.
The title of the shir is Ilfa,
That people can still listen
Ilfa, Rav Yochanan, Rav Reuben Margolios, and Rav Moshe Feinstein. Let's write a title when we're done, okay? We'll figure it out. Okay, here we go. On this page, what I gave you, just the photocopy that I gave you, is a copy of the Hakdama, the introduction to a book by Rav Reuven Margoliot, who I will tell you all about later in the shir. Okay? Rav Reuven Margoliot wrote a sefer on Masechet Sanhedrin. Okay? This sefer has become a standard work. When people learn Masechet Sanhedrin in yeshivas, they learn it with Margoliot Siyam. Pretty much any yeshiva where they learn Sanhedrin, this is a standard work. Okay? He lived in the 20th century. He died in the 1970s. Okay? Rav Reuven Margolios. He wrote this book on Sanhedrin, and his introduction is what I photocopied here. Okay? We'll get to it later. We will discuss it in detail. But he happens at the beginning of the introduction to quote a Gemara in Masechet Tani. So rather than photocopy the page of Masechet Tani, we don't need that because I photocopied the introduction to Margoliot Yam. So take a look at the beginning of the page, just a piece of Gemara. Ilfa v'Rav Yochanan havu garsei ba'oraita. Ilfa is the name of a person. Ilfa was Rav Yochanan's chavrusa. Okay? You guys have all heard of Rav Yochanan, one of the great first generation Amoraim. Right? He was the greatest Amora of the first generation of Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael. We talk about him probably every day. Rabbi Yochanan's chavrusa, when he was younger, was a person by the name of Ilfa, who was no slouch himself. Okay? Ilfa, you didn't hear this shir. You didn't come last year and hear this shir. This is new material for you tonight.
Last week is awesome.
That's good. Ilfa v'Rabbi Yochanan habu garsi v'oraita. Ilfa and Rabbi Yochanan were learning Torah. Dechika lahu milta tuva. That means matters were very tight for them, otherwise known as they were poor. They had it. Money was very, very tight. They were having a financial problem. They were learning, and they weren't making any money. They were poor. Amri, they said, okay, could you stop with this piece of paper? It's distracting me. Deal with it afterwards. No, you don't throw it on the ground. Pick it up. Just deal with it afterwards. Okay? Put it underneath your hand out. That way you won't distract you. You can edit that out. Amre, they said, Nekum v'nezel, let's get up and go. V'nevid iska, and let's do some business. V'nikayim b'nafshin, and we will fulfill in ourselves the pasuk that says, Efes ki lo yiyeh b'cha evyon. The pasuk says in Sefer Dvarim that you will not have any poor people among you. In other words, since there's a pasuk that says as a bracha to the Jewish people, you will not have any poor people among you. We're poor. Let's go. I think we should go work a little bit so that we can fulfill the pasuk that says that there will be no poor Jews. In other words, let's go make a living. Okay, everyone get the setup. Ilfa and Yochanan are learning. They're poor. They can't support themselves, and they said to each other, "Hey, we're not supposed to be poor. Jews are not supposed to be poor. It's not what the Torah wants. Let's go work a little bit and make a living." Aslu, they went. Otve tute guda re'iyah. They went and they sat at the base of a shaky wall. Shaky bridge or shaky wall. Okay? It's really a wall. They sat like, there was some wall that was like not very sturdy. It was some like old wall. And they sat down by it. Havuka karche rifta. They were eating a sandwich. Literally means they made it wrapping bread. Right? They're eating a wrap. Atu trei malachei asharet. Two ministering angels, two malachim came. Raise your hand if you know the story. Is it? You've heard of it? Yeah. Atu. Well, Gary, you learned Tanis this year, right? Atu trei malachei asharet. Two angels, two malachim came. Sham'ei Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan heard the malachim talking. The Amr Chad L'Chavrei, that one malach, one angel said to the other one, Nishdi alayu. We should throw this wall down on top of them and kill them. Nishdi alayu haiguda. Let's throw upon them this wall, v'niktalinu, and kill them. Why? Shemenichim chaye olam, because they're setting aside eternal life. The oskim b'chayisha, and they're involved in temporary life. They're involved in the life of the moment. They stopped learning Torah, which is eternal life, and now they're doing some gashmius thing, some temporary life thing. Let's kill them. Amr le'idach. The other one said to that malach, Shavkinhu. We should leave them alone. The ikabahu chad, the kaima le'shaita. Because there is one among them, one of these two guys, the kaima le'shaita, that his hour has arrived. He's going to be great. Rabbi Yochanan Shama. Rabbi Yochanan heard all this. Ilfa lo Shama. Ilfa didn't hear this. Okay? Rabbi Yochanan heard the dialogue between the angels. Ilfa did not. Amr le Rabbi Yochanan le Ilfa. Rabbi Yochanan, who heard it, said to Ilfa, Shama mar midi? Did you hear anything? Amr le, well, he said no. Just eating a sandwich. No, I didn't hear anything. Amar, so Rabbi Yochanan said to himself, Midashami ana, from the fact that I heard it, the Ilfa lo shama, and Ilfa didn't hear it, Shma mina, I can conclude from that, Lididi kaima lishaita, that I'm the one who they were referring to, whose time has come. Meaning, if I heard this message and Ilfa didn't, then they probably are talking about me. He's not being arrogant, he's just saying, well, it probably applies to me then. Or maybe he's implying that maybe I was on a higher level. That I heard the malachim talking and he didn't. But it seems that I'm the one they were talking about. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan says, he turns to Ilfa and he says, Ihadar, I'm going to go back to learning. V'uki b'nafshay, and I'm going to fulfill in me the pasuk. Ki lo yechdalev yom mikar ha'aretz. There's another pasuk that contradicts the first pasuk. Oh, Torah on it. Anyway, there's another pasuk a few prakim later in Sefer Devarim that says there will always be poor people. There's a pasuk that says there'll never be poor people. The pasuk says there will always be poor people. Now is not the time to learn Chumash and discuss that. It's a whole separate sheet. Okay? But basically, Rabbi Yochanan says, you know what? I'm going to go back and be poor again. I'm going to go back to learning Torah. What's going on?
You have that, you know that big red book about Sparta?
Oh yeah, that's a weird book. I saw it on that table right there. Right there? No, right in front of Akiva, under the stack. Okay? I'm going to go back. Rabbi Yochanan Hadar. Rabbi Yochanan went back to learning Torah full time. Ilfa lo Hadar. Ilfa did not go back. Okay? Ata Ilfa. Until Ilfa came, and it probably means, or Rashi says it means until he got back from wherever he had went off to do business. When people did business, they would go on these long trips. In the old days, a business trip could be years, right? They would go off. So until Ilfa returned, like Ilfa goes away, his impoverished buddy, Rabbi Yochanan, I don't know if he's called Rabbi Yochanan yet. Yochanan goes back to learning. Ilfa goes off on business, comes back, and Rabbi Yochanan is the Gadol Adar. He's Rosh Hashiva. Ad Ata Ilfa Malich Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan had become king, which is an expression that's used sometimes for someone becoming a Rosh Hashiva. Amrullah. So people said to Ilfa, look inside. People said to Ilfa, I ativ mar v'garis. People said to Ilfa, if the master had gone back into learning, lo hava malich mar. Rabbi Yochanan wouldn't be the god. Meaning, what were they saying to Ilfa? People said, really, had Ilfa stayed in learning, he would have been greater than Rabbi Yochanan. He would have been the Rosh Hashiva today. Okay, so Ilfa took offense to this. That they were implying that his learning was not at the same level anymore as Rabbi Yochanan. Azal, so he went, Tala nafshe, and he hung himself. Doesn't mean hung himself like this. Doesn't mean that. You'll see. He went and he basically dangled himself. The Iskaria de Sfinta, on the mast pole of a ship. Amar, and he said, I ika deshaya libi matnita d'Rav Yechia v'Rav Yoshaya v'lo pashtinale. Says, if there's anyone who could ask me a question in the brises of Rav Yechia and Rav Yoshaya. In Bakir's shir today I mentioned Rav Yechia and Rav Yoshaya. You guys remember that? If anyone here could ask me about a brisa, ask me any question in a brisa from Rav Yechia and Rav Yoshaya, if anyone here could ask me a question from a brisa of Rav Yechia and Rav Yoshaya, and I won't be able to answer it based on a Mishnah, I will fall off. I'll let go. I'll fall off of the mast pole of the ship, and I'll drown. Atahu Saba, a certain old man came. And Hahu Saba, that old man, is an expression that appears a bunch of times in Shas. We also see it in the story with Yochanan, with Shir Mordechai when he comes out of the cave and there's an old man running with Hadassim. So there's a Tosfos in Chulin. It doesn't fit in every story. Specifically the story of Shir Mordechai doesn't fit so well. But there's a Tosfos on Daf Ches in Chulin that says that every time it says Hahu Saba, it means Eliyahu Hanavi. It doesn't fit with every case though. Wherever the case is, here it would fit. A certain old man came along. What are you smiling about, Oliver?
I love Eliyahu.
I like Eliyahu Hanavi. Should I do that one night for Thursday night? Just tell Eliyahu Hanavi stories?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Stories are great.
I didn't give a shir this year, but Eliyahu Hanavi?
No.
And doorways?
No.
I didn't give a shir this year.
I remember that last
That's a
time.
cool shir. Eliyahu Hanavi.
I've never heard that shir.
All right. Ata Ahu Saba, a certain old man came, Tanale, and he told him the following brayta: you don't have this anymore. Okay, he cut this off. And he, I'm not even going to bother saying it. He basically, because it's not important, he does exactly what he takes him up on the challenge. He quotes a brayta to him. and he asks him a question, and sure enough, Ilfa answers it up from a Mishnah. He does exactly. Okay. In other words, someone takes him up in the challenge, and he answers it up. That's the story. So now, the question is the story telling us that it's better to stay in learning or that it's better to work? What?
It's telling us it depends on the person.
Is it? That might be what you believe. Is that what the story's saying?
I think it's saying a balance. Like, if you get too much of one, and you end up
How is it
with
saying
one
a
extreme.
balance? Neither of them is a balance.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's saying you both went to
They're both learning.
opposite extremes at some point. But, like it's saying, like, you need to find the balance.
Is it saying that? I know that you believe that, and I believe that too, but is it saying that?
I think it's favoring learning more.
What?
It's favoring learning.
Why is it favoring learning?
Because everything's based on learning.
How is the story favor learning?
Yochanan first went to learn.
Let's stay within the story. Let's keep our own opinions aside and stay within the words of the story.
Yochanan went to learn, and then when Ilfa came back,
Ilfa.
came back, he was criticized, and he felt bad that he thought he didn't learn enough. It's all about learning.
Maybe. Okay, good. Yeah.
I think the story teaches us that if you go over work instead of staying and learning the entire time, everybody will think you don't learn, but really you'll.
Okay. Now,
That's the pleasure shot.
Ilfa, yeah.
I just found it interesting that at the beginning of the story, they sat next to a wall that was shaky, and that's like,
You're not supposed to do
supposed
that.
to do that. And they're both big doors.
Yeah.
They weren't learning enough.
Now,
Maybe they know.
this story is, the first text I'm going to quote to you is, this I didn't photocopy for you, I'm going to read it to you, is a tshuva by Rav Moshe Feinstein. Okay, you guys, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands because every single person here has heard of Rav Moshe Feinstein. You haven't just heard of him, you know what country he lived in, you know what city he lived in probably, you know what building he lived in, right? If I showed you pictures of Gedolim, many of you could pick him out of a police lineup. You know, Moshe Feinstein is a pretty famous person. He's about as famous as a 20th century rabbi could get. I don't know if there's a more famous rabbi who lived in the generation before you guys were born. Okay? Maybe in the communities you guys are from, Rav Soloveitch, but pretty much. Okay? Good. Ramesh wrote a tshuva where someone asked him the question, well, he wrote a tshuva that was to be read at a convention of the principals of high schools in America. Okay? And here's what he says to them. Hine yadua le'olam haTorah. You know, I'm just going to say it in English. I'm going to translate exactly what he says. I'll just read you his words. Behold, it is known in the world of Torah what I have said many times before B'nai Torah regarding secular studies. That for B'nai Torah and people and B'nai Yeshiva of the holy yeshivas who are fit to grow in Torah and Yiras Hashem, in pure Yiras Hashem. So essentially, secular studies, even when it's not kfira, even when they're not learning out and out heresy, and even if it's not mixed men and women, it's awesome. For someone who could grow in learning Torah and Yiras Shamayim in a pure way, secular studies, even if it's not kfira, even if the context isn't mixed, secular studies is awesome. Okay? Don't worry, you don't have to hold like Rav Moshe. There are many people who disagree. Okay, but let's just, this is Rav Moshe's truth. Why? Why is it asur? De menichin chaye olam. Notice he's quoting the Gemara in Tanis we just read. Because they're setting aside eternal life, Shehu Isser, which is Asr. Even after they have risen to a very high level of Torah learning. Just because you've made a lot of siyums and you learned yeshiva and you've done well, it doesn't mean you've learned enough Torah. Now you can go do secular studies, says Rav Moshe. You can't. How do we know that? Ayin betanit daf chaf aleph amid aleph. Look at the Gemara in Tanit daf chaf aleph amid aleph. Be'uvda de Rav Yochanan be'ilfa. Look at the story of Rav Yochanan be'ilfa. Mitrei malachi asharei. And look at what the angels in the story say. Ayin sham, see there. In other words, says Rav Moshe, what did they say? We should kill them. Meaning, your average yeshiva bacher, if he did what Rabbi Yochanan and Ilfa did, what would the Malachim have done? They would have thrown the wall on him. How do we know? Because the Malachim say the reason why they don't kill them. The only reason they're not going to kill them is because one of them is about to become the Gadol Hadar. Meaning they are worthy of being killed. Right? In the story. Va'af shehayaz sham zman katzar. And even though even though Rabbi Yochanan only left the world of Torah for a short time, and because he needed to make a living, because they were very poor, they wanted to feed themselves, b'nei beitam and their families. For this reason, Ilfa wasn't punished. But for Bacharim and Avrechim and young married men who are young and still haven't learned everything that they need to learn, and by putting themselves into secular studies, it's not possible that they're going to reach the level of a Talmid Chacham. That will know the Torah in this generation. Because in order to become a Talmid Chacham, you need all of your energies. Shechananu Hashem Yisbarach, that Hashem granted us with. Bedat, with our knowledge of Avanat Advarim and with our understanding. V'yabazbeis kochotav gam l'murichol. A guy who leaves yeshiva is going to end up wasting his energies on secular studies. Uv'meshach hazman, and as time passes, ye'asu limudei chol etzlo ikar. Oy vavoy, if this happens. And in the passage of time, the secular studies will become the main thing. Necessarily. Because the power of the Yetzer Hara, very powerful. That this is the reason they started being Mevatel Limud Torah. And to learn Limud Echol, for some period of time. Yomarlo, meaning even though he started off doing it because I need a Parnasa, b'meshach zman yomarlo acharei avor k'tzat zman shetzarich yoter zman limud echol. They're going to say, I need more time for limud echol. Imatach choshev litparnes, if you really want to make a good living. Va'afilu below zeh lo shayach litgadel b'Torah. He says even without that, a person cannot become great in Torah. Va'afilu liot k'tzat talmid chacham uben Torah, and even to be a little bit of a talmid chacham uben Torah, efshar is impossible. B'gzelat hazman, if you steal your time. And you steal your efforts and your labors, with his talents, if you steal them from Torah to Limud and instead of growing great, Yered Mata Mata. It's going to go down lower and lower. I'm not going to finish the tshuva. He goes on for a while like this, keeps talking about how terrible it is to go to college and to waste your time studying secular studies. That's Rav Moshe Feinstein. He was pretty stark on this point. Don't worry, guys. Okay, look, obviously, there's a point to be made here. You have to remember, like what I said tonight, the main thing is Talmud Torah. We have to make a Parnasa, but, let's not forget what we're on earth for. But there's plenty of Gedolim, Rav Moshe's contemporaries, who went to college themselves and advocated it. And we have to understand Rav Moshe's point. Yes?
I think that there is a point that modern Orthodox world doesn't develop as a result of this. I think we're going
Yeah, it's a problem. Torah is a pastime. It's not a lifestyle. Problem. Anyway, Now, what's interesting here is that Ramesha is using this story. Ramesha focuses in the story on the fact that what Rabbi Yochanan and Ilfa did when they left the world of Torah was wrong, and that it looks like from the story that they deserve to be punished for it. Right? That's what he focuses on. I kicked it by mistake. Okay. But they weren't punished because Rabbi Yochanan was supposed to be the Gadol. Whatever it is, that's what Ramesha focuses on. Now we're going to read Rav Ruvain Margalios' introduction to Margalio Hayam, and we're going to see a different perspective on the story of Ilfa and Rabbi Yochanan. From this interesting story, we learn how, in what regard they held Ilfa. This is a guy that we've never heard of, and he was obviously held in quite high regard. To the extent that when the story opens, his name is mentioned first. The story starts, Ilfa v'Rabbi Yochanan. When there's a machlokas between Rav and Shmuel, you ever see Shmuel's name first? Rav Shmuel, Damri Tarvayim. Rav Shmuel, Chad Amar v'Chadam, right? Why? Rav was older, Rav was Shmuel's Rebbe. The more prominent figure comes first. Yeah?
Somebody always comes before Torah.
Yeah.
Is he more prominent?
The Gemara in Eruvin says that they were bigger Talmidei Chachamim. Bein Hillel wins because they're the majority. It says, it says that Beferish in the Gemara in Eruvin. They were bigger Talmidei Chachamim. The Shammaists. There weren't as many of them. And there was a Baskol. Whatever, it's a different topic. Okay? But we say that the story begins, V'noktam, Ilfa v'Rabbi Yochanan. Ilfa Kodem. V'amru Sham, She'im, and furthermore it says in the story, She'im on the second line of Rav Margalios' text, She'im haya Ilfa yoshev bo'ala shel Torah. It says right there in the Gemara that had Ilfa sat in the tent of Torah, v'lo haya yotzei lemeh b'diska, and he had not gone out to make a business, oto hayu mamlichim. What did they say? They said that he would have been the Rosh Hashiva. Not that both of them would have been. He would have been. B'yoto gamir tvei mi Rabbi Yochanan, as Rashi says there, because he learned more than Rabbi Yochanan. Rashi says there that the reason is that Ilfa was a bigger Talmid Chacham than Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan atzmo tier et chavero zemar, and Rabbi Yochanan himself in the story refers to his friend as master. V'gam acharei kol svivotav kasher hadar, and furthermore, after all of his wanderings on business, when he came back, her'ah she'im ki avad iska, he showed that even though he did business, garis tvei minei. Rabbeinu Hananel and Rashi both say that he proved with that challenge that he did at the end that he still knew more. Aval Rabbi Yochanan hadar, but Rabbi Yochanan went back. Chazar mi machshavto li'avad iska. He went back from his original thought to do business. Ki Rabbi Yochanan hu shedarash hakatuv. Now here it brings in something interesting. He brings in a drasha that Rabbi Yochanan said in Masechet Eruvin that sheds light on this story. Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said the drasha. There's a pasuk that says, you know the pasuk that says the Torah is lo v'shamayim hi? So that pasuk, the whole pasuk, it says v'lo me'ever layam hi. The Torah is also not across the sea. Lemor, to say mi ya'avor lanu el ever hayam v'yikachel lanu b'yashme'ena otav v'nasen. That's what the pasuk says. The pasuk says the Torah is not across the sea. It's not in heaven, that you have to get someone to go up to heaven to get it. It's not across the sea. Here's the pasuk, that we shall say, that we should have to say, who's going to go over to the sea and get it for us and teach it to us so that we'll do it. Rabbi Yochanan said a drasha on that pasuk. Why does the Torah dafka say, the Torah is not in the sea that we'd have to have someone go across the sea and get it? What does it mean? Ki lo timtza lo b'sacharnim v'lo b'tagranim. That you will not find Torah greatness in merchants and businessmen. You see, the sea, the ship, the ancient world is the symbol of business. That's the symbol of commerce. A ship. You know, Yisachar and Zvulun have this relationship that Yisachar learns and Zvulun does business. Well, the Medrash Rabbah, Rabbeinu Bachaya brings it in his Perush al Torah, describes what was on the flag of each Shevet. Zvulun's flag had a ship. You knew that?
It's on his, what should we call it? You have all the tribes, you have a symbol for them.
Yeah.
This is a ship.
This is a ship. This also was on his decal. Not all those symbols are what was on their flag. But yeah, his flag, his symbol, the symbol of Zvulun is always a ship. Why? Because that's business. The ancient world, a ship symbolized business. So Rabbi Yochanan is the author of a famous drasha that says Torah greatness is not to be found among the businessmen. Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said it. Behusha Amar, Rabbi Yochanan is also the one who said, Eze Talmid Chacham, Kol Shehu Mevatel Asakav Mipnei Mishnato. This is a Medrash in Kohelet Rabbah. Who is a Talmid Chacham? Everyone who does away with his business because of his learning. Uvachein, and furthermore, Biyoto b'imei alumav tzur mirabanon, and therefore, and so, when Rabbi Yochanan was a youngster, when he was a young yeshiva bacher, tzur mirabanon means a young Talmid Chacham. Talmid Yoshev l'fnei Rabotav, when he was a student sitting before his rebbeim. Machar kol nechasav v'nachlaotav. It's another thing. It says in Shir Shirim Rabbah that Rabbi Yochanan, he sold all of his possessions, all of his inheritance, and all of his assets. Yerushat Avotav, what he inherited from his fathers. Laman hit parnes kol atan shanim, in order to support himself for all the years. He sold all his family assets and used that money to support himself through years and years of learning. Et kol hon beito natan ba'avasha avat Torah. He gave all of the treasures of his home for the love he had for Torah. Gever Rav Pa'alim Zeh, a man of great accomplishments such as this, Shelo halach arba amot b'li Torah, who didn't even go 4 amos without words of Torah, as it says in Yuma. Yashav l'raglei rabotav kol odam b'chayim. He sat at the feet of his teachers as long as they were alive. B'chol od haya Chizkiya Rabbo b'chayim lo haya Rabbi Yochanan bal yeshiva. And as long as Chizkiya, Rabbi Yochanan's Rebbe, was alive, Rabbi Yochanan didn't start a yeshiva. He was just going to support himself in learning from his assets. He was not going to make a dime off of it. He was just spending the money from his assets in order to sit and learn from his rebbeim for as long as he could. And even after his rebbeim moved on to the eternal world, to the next world, he founded his own yeshiva that he stood at the head of it. And his Torah then became not only his parnasa, but also his eternal life. Ilfa on the other, yes sir.
Seems to be saying that Rabbi Yochanan, he's better because
I'm not saying anyone is better. Let's finish the piece. Okay? He didn't. All Rabbi Reuben Margolis has done now is he described the greatness of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was a person who used every cent of his worldly possessions to continue his learning. He did not work, he just learned.
No, but I'm saying he was going to work until he heard the malachim. If he didn't hear them, would he still be working? So maybe
but before he went out to work because he was poor, he actually had a lot of assets, and this story only happened after years of him using up every penny he had to keep sitting and learning. Okay? Ilfa, Ilfa, it seems, lo haya lo ma limkor. It seems that Ilfa didn't have what to sell. Lo yarash nachalat tzedeh v'kerem. He didn't inherit the inheritance of fields and vineyards. Umibli emtsaim she'afsharu lo, and without any means that would allow him, ulebeito, and his family, l'chiyot ad yamim shebahem yeh ra'ui lo. He didn't have the means for his family to continue to live until he would be old enough to become the teacher, the leader. He was forced to turn also to business, and to say that the Torah is good with derech eretz. Malachei Hasharet kabdu alehem. The Malachim got upset at them. Im ki yadu shegam biotam socharim lo yitrapu mitoratam. Even though the Malachim knew that even as businessmen they would not stop learning. Aval hein Torah kazu hi acha yisha v'lo lahalomed. But Torah like that, when you're also working, is just temporary for the person who's learning. Rabbi Yochanan Hadar. Rabbi Yochanan went back. Aval Ilfa huchrach la'asot iska. But Ilfa was forced to do business. V'hayam l'semel shel Talmid Chacham socher. Ilfa became the symbol of the Talmid Chacham who's also a businessman. There are people like that. Yada Ilfa knew. Ki omnam lo timtza halacha psuka hora'a l'maaseh b'sachranim v'tagranim. Ilfa knew that it's true that you're never going to find a halacha following the opinion of someone who's a businessman. Even if he is a Talmid Chacham. It's never going to be that way. It's always going to be the professional rabbis, the big names. He knew that. Adam prati she'eino ba'al misra v'lo yagis libo b'hora'a. A private person who doesn't have a position and is not going to yagis libo. He's not going to make himself arrogant by posketing. This is a private person who doesn't have a position. He's not going to find a need to study all the Piskei Halacha.
Just wondering where the paper is.
It's right here, but it was distracting us, so we put it away. Oh, it's happening again. Go away.
Is it finished? Or
Go away. We'll give it to you afterwards. Go away.
I don't want people.
Go away. A private person who doesn't have an official position in the community as a rabbi, even as a Talmid Chacham, he doesn't need to sit there studying and memorizing all the rulings of all the poskim. You need that if you're going to paskin shaylos for people. Eino osek b'sifrei kitzur halacha. He's not involved in these books of kitzurei halachas like the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Berurah. He doesn't need to be involved in that. But rather, he establishes his times for learning, his free time, to investigation of the essence of Torah and the roots of the halachas. Gemara, basically. And when his friends made him aware, when Ilfa's friends said to him, when they said to him, had you set yourself aside for learning, you would have been the king, you would have been the ruler, the Rosh Yeshiva, Hayoshev Rosh Ba'Yeshiva. Ilfa showed them that even though he held on to business, Im Kol Zeh, nevertheless, Kabir Kochol Lishov Ma'im Chayim Mikor Ma'yanam. His strength is very powerful to draw water from their source of life, meaning Liftor Svekot Achronim Mishnah Kadmonim, to be able to paskin shaylas, later shaylas, from the earlier sources. Ilfa showed them that he could do it just like they could. V'im lo hirshato ito le'ilfa leharbitz Torah b'kviyut. And if Ilfa's time did not allow him to spread Torah as a set part of his life, he wasn't a teacher, he wasn't a Rosh Yeshiva, he was a businessman. With friends who are listening, and Talmidim around him, who were appropriate Talmidim. He didn't have that in his life, even though he didn't have that. Ilfa chose a different way to make his Torah known and eternal. He had a way of teaching Torah. He wasn't a Rosh Yeshiva, he didn't give classes. B'kotvo alei sefer divrei Torato shehela bi'itotav shekaval Torah. By him putting down on paper his Torah words that he composed when he had time to learn. He wrote Torah at a time when it was mostly oral. Im hayom hayalim lacha b'mischar or b'misrad. If his day was for working in business or in an office, hinei leilotav hikdish lemishmar. Behold, his nights were sanctified for the watch, for Torah. V'hiknalo lechaver lirshom b'pinkasav me'asher he'ela b'limudav. And his friend became the writing in his notebooks that which he came up with in his learning. Va'altalo le'ilfa shehagu chachmei Yisrael b'sfarav. And it happened, Ilfa merited that Chachmei Yisrael learned his notebooks. We actually see this now. Watch, he's going to bring sources. In Gemara Menachot, Daf Ayin Amud Aleph, it says, Katuv apinkasei de Ilfa. It's a funny thing, in the Gemara usually we quote people. In Menachos, Ilfa enters into the Sugya as a quote from his notebook. He wasn't one of the rabbis in the Beis Medrash, but he's an opinion in a Sugya, in Menachos. It says in the notebook of Ilfa. Okay? Uvi Yerushalmi Masrot, and the Yerushalmi Masechet Masrot, it says, Amar Rabbi Yonah. Rabbi Yonah says, Ashkachte, I found, Katuv, Bepinkasei de Chilfi, I found written in Ilfa's notebook. Chilfi and Ilfa is the same person, it's the same word. I'll tell you afterwards what the word Ilfa actually means if you look at it with a Jastrow, which will shed light on this whole thing also. V'chaveiro hagadol Rabbi Yochanan lamad midvarav, and his friend, his great friend Rabbi Yochanan learned from him. V'amar shuvat mishmo, and Rabbi Yochanan quotes him, and then he brings a bunch of Gemaras where he quotes him. Zvachim chaf amad aleph, halo shem chaf alef amad aleph, Yerushalmi and Trumas, Chalo and Perek Beis, Shabbos Perek Zayin and Yerushalmi. We see a bunch of times Rabbi Yochanan quotes Ilfa, like quoting a Rebbe, quotes Ilfa. Amnam lo malach. However, he never took over. He never became the leader. About Ilfa eino chafetz klal limloch, but Ilfa doesn't want to be the leader. Gaguei Ilfa hein lilmod lamed. Ilfa, and notice he's talking about Ilfa now in the present tense. Ilfa's yearning is to learn and to teach. Lasotas naim la Torah, to make extensions of the Torah, to expand on the Torah. Lishov mimkorot rishonim, to draw off the sources of the earlier generations. V'lashkot tzmeim l'dvar Hashem, and to give to drink the thirsty for the word of God. B'sichot chaverim u'b'pirsum divrei Torah shekatav b'pinkasav, and by publicizing the words of Torah that he wrote in his notebooks. Ruvain ben Rav Moshe Margalius. Now, this is Rav Reuven Margalius' introduction, start to finish. I didn't leave anything out, without any mention of Masechet Sanhedrin or the book that he's writing. This is his Hakdama to his Perush HaMasechet Sanhedrin, his most important and most learned work. According to Rav Margalius' view, the hero of the story is not Rabbi Yochanan. The hero of the story is Ilfa. The point of the story is that let's not take lightly the Talmud Chacham who isn't the famous one with the big position. Now, here's what's really cool about I just quoted to you two exact contemporaries. These were exact contemporaries. They were born a couple of years apart. Rav Moshe happened to live a very long time. Rav Moshe lived to the age of 93. Rav Margalius died. He was younger than that. Had Rav Margalius lived as long as Rav Moshe, they would have died around the same year. They were exact contemporaries. Both from Eastern Europe. Both Gaonim. Probably two of the biggest Bikiyim in terms of just what they knew, the database in the world. Two of the top 5 Bikiyim in the world. Maybe the 2 top Bikiyim in the world. Rav Margalius' books are unbelievable. Well beyond the scope of our discussion for me to show you pieces of his writings, but his writings are totally mind-blowing in the fact that there was no such thing as a computer when he did them. He quotes everything under the sun. Nigla, Nister, and you see when you read a piece by him, it's just unbelievable what he quotes. He knows everything, he quotes everything, whether it's Zohars or Poskim or later works, earlier works. He was an unbelievable Baki, a Gadol Shebigdolim, one of the greatest Gaonim of the 20th century. Before I gave this shir last year, had you ever heard of him? How many people here ever heard of him? Yeah, here and there, you heard of him. You heard him from in Yeshiva, you heard of him. In 11th grade, you did Sanhedrin, so you learn Magal Yisayam. If you learn Masechah Sanhedrin, then you've learned Magal Yisayam, because they always quote it. Rav Moshe Feinstein and Rav Margalius are Ilfa and Rabbi Yochanan. That's who they are. Rav Moshe Feinstein comes from a rabbinic family in Europe, a well-known rabbinic family. He's a Gaon. Experiences times of hardship right after the communists take over Russia. Never stops learning. And rises to greatness as Malach. If there's any rabbi in the 20th century who we could call the king, the leader of Klal Yisrael, Sir Moshe Feinstein. He was the posek for the whole world. Rav Reuven Margolius was poor, growing up in Galicia, and he left yeshiva, and he opened a bookshop. And he became an importer and exporter of books. And then at some point he moved to Israel, and he took a job as a librarian in a Sifriyat HaRambam, that's what the name of the library is in Tel Aviv, and worked at a parnasa, was never a Rosh Yeshiva, was never officially the rabbi of anything. People only found out about him when he started publishing his books, and people were like, whoa, who is this guy? Nobody knew who he was, and books started coming out by this person, Reuven Margolius, and the whole Torah world was just like, this person's the biggest Gaon on earth. And then book after book after book came out. I think by the time he was done, he published about 60 books. Tremendous amounts of written material, and written material that is, again, it's beyond the scope of a discussion there's no way I could show you other than just to talk about how amazing it is. It is totally mind-blowing in his Bikiyas. There's nothing like Reuven Margolius. It's unbelievable. He has a book where you look up any Gemara, and he tells you anything in all works of Kabbalah that deal with that Gemara. How does he know? He has another book. He has a really cool book. He has a cool book, which I've mentioned before, Malachai Elyon, which is all about all the Malachim mentioned by Chazal. Lechek Shemot HaKinim Talmud is all about all the names of people. Mentioning names. Ilfa is actually a nickname. The word Ilfa means ship. Chilfi also. Those two words in Aramaic means ship. And Reuven Margolius says it was probably a nickname he had because he went to work, because he went into business. When he hangs himself, what is he doing? Tala means he can mean hang. It also means to make yourself dependent. He basically said, look, I'm going to hold on to the ship and answer all your questions. What's he saying symbolically? The fact that I'm involved in business is not a stira to my greatness in Torah. I could hang on. I could have my hands in the world of business and still have no problem answering up any question and learning.
Was he saying that if
and he's saying, and if I can't, I'll let go.
go to yeshiva?
If you can't, I'll let go.
Meaning he'll go to
Yes. If I can't answer it, I'll let go. Test me. And he passes. Rav Reuven Margolius, and it's cryptic. He doesn't explain why he's writing this as his introduction to this work, but it's so clear. You read it, and you realize that Reuven Margolius is talking about himself. He knew who he was. And he knew who everyone else was. And he wanted people to realize that you don't take something lightly. He's basically saying to the reader, don't take this lightly because you've never heard of me, and because I'm not a Rosh Yeshiva of a big yeshiva, and because I'm not the big posek, I'm not the chief rabbi. That's what he's saying.
That's why I said last time about why it's called
Margolios Hayam. It's the pearls. A margalit is a pearl. The pearls of the sea. The sea is where the businessman works. It's the ship. The name of the book is Margolios Hayam. So, this same story. Now, I'll tell you what the real answer is about this story. You know what it is? This story has both messages in it. I wouldn't even call it a balance. I would call it a tension. The story presents to us, there are two heroes in the story. And they present two types of Gedolim. It's not that Rabbi Yochanan's right or Ilfa's right. They're both right. This is a Gadol B'Torah and this is a Gadol B'Torah. And we need this one and we need this one. And the truth is, when they left the world of Torah, maybe they did deserve to be killed, but maybe the Malachim didn't count on Ilfa staying what he was. Rabbi Yochanan needed to go back. Ilfa didn't need to go back. He didn't hear it. Whatever the reason is, however you interpret it, but it's also interesting, you see Rav Moshe Feinstein focusing on one aspect of the story, and Rav Moshe Feinstein was mamash a Rabbi Yochanan figure. He lived an impoverished life for the sake of Torah at points in his life, and was the leader. He was Rabbi Yochanan. Reuven Margolius, he's Ilfa. He lived a life of Ilfa. He went off into business. He became a businessman, stayed in learning, and was gone. Now, I should say, by the end of his life, the last 20 years of his life or so, everyone knew who he was. He still didn't have an official position, but everyone knew who he was. His books were already being published. He would speak at conferences. People already at that point knew about him.
Called a rabbi?
He was called Reuven Margolius.
Did he have any kind of official smicha?
No. No.
Self-taught.
Never went to yeshiva?
He learned in a yeshiva in Europe. He did.
Until what age?
I don't know. I think 20s. But most of his learning was just through the years, reading everything hidden. He must have had a photographic memory. His work is just, it's absolutely astounding, his works. He has one really cool sefer, one of the coolest svarim ever. And you guys remember that, I've mentioned it before. Every time it says in Shas, with his machlokas, and it mentions two mandamers, and then it says Chad Amar v'Chad Amar. Right? So what that means is that the Gemara knows which two people argue, but they don't know who said which. He figures it out, based on other things they said elsewhere in Kol HaTorah Kula. He'll figure out who said which thing. V'Chad Amar v'Chad Amar. He's got so many cool books. Herzog's a big fan of his.
Ravina or Rashi couldn't figure it out.
No, but he figures it out. A lot of it's conjecture, but sometimes his conjecture is like really, you can see like he's nailed it. He just like he'll say, okay, he said this, so it's likely that he's the one who said this. Like he figures it out. It's just a really cool book. But he knew everything. He wasn't dealing with a computer. He knew everything.
Do you think he would be possible in the age of the computer?
I don't know, but I just think it's kind of cool. This basically the shir is kind of over, but I think it's kind of interesting. You have this story, and the story has mixed messages in it. The Malachim do say they're going to kill them. There is some negative in going out to work. On the other hand, Ilfa sort of wins. So it's unclear I think it's fine that the Torah is giving us a mixed message. The Torah doesn't tell us what to do. It gives us a framework in which to think about things, and then we make a decision. That's what it does. So this is the framework in which to think about things. You have Ilfa and you have Rabbi Yochanan. And then you have two Gedolim, contemporary Gedolim, who use this story, who write about this story. One in a tshuva, Rav Moshe Feinstein, and one in the introduction to his Sefer. And it mirrors their lives and their outlooks on the world. I think it's just it's kind of interesting. Anyway, and for us, we have there's lessons for us to learn from Rav Moshe Feinstein and from Rav Yochanan. There's lessons for us to learn from Reuven Margolius. Remember, going out to work, going out to make a parnasa, that doesn't mean that you're less devoted to Torah. It doesn't mean that you're less devoted to Torah. It ties back into my sikha tonight. Torah isn't just like, it's a thing I'm learning. It's the framework in which we think about life. It's the framework in which we interact with the world. It's the lens through which we see everything. So it needs to be part of an ongoing part of our life. You brush your teeth, you take showers, you eat 3 meals a day, you learn Torah. It's got to be just a part of the framework of our lives, in order that we could stand the test of that judgment when we're holding on to the posts of the ship and say, I'm no less dedicated to Torah than the guy sitting in the base medrash. We have to be able to say that. So, good night.